International adoption of a Nigerian child to parents abroad. When considering international adoption of a Nigerian child by parents living in the United States or any other country, there are specific criteria and requirements that need to be met. While the precise details can vary based on the laws and regulations of both Nigeria and the receiving country, here are some common criteria to consider. Eligibility. Prospective adoptive parents typically need to meet the eligibility criteria set by both Nigeria and their home country. These criteria may include factors such as age, marital status, health, income, and criminal record checks. The specific requirements can differ, so it's important to consult the adoption authorities in both countries for accurate information. Adoption process. Prospective adoptive parents must follow the adoption process outlined by the adoption authorities in both Nigeria and their home country. This process usually includes submitting applications, completing home studies, attending training and counseling sessions, and providing various documents and references. Immigration and legal requirements. The receiving country, such as the United States, will have its own immigration and legal requirements for international adoption. This typically involves obtaining the necessary visas or permits to bring the adopted child into the country and completing the adoption process within the legal framework of the receiving country. Adoption agency or facilitator. In many cases, international adoptions require the involvement of a licensed adoption agency or facilitator authorized to facilitate adoptions between the two countries. These agencies can provide guidance, facilitate the necessary paperwork, and ensure compliance with the adoption laws and regulations of both countries. A home study is typically required for international adoptions. This involves an assessment of the prospective adoptive parent's suitability to adopt, including home visits, interviews, and background checks. The home study report is an essential component of the adoption process and is used to determine the eligibility and readiness of the adoptive parents. Post-placement and follow-up. After the child is placed with the prospective adoptive parents, many countries require post-placement visits or reports to ensure the well-being of the child in the adoptive home. These post-placement requirements may continue for a certain period after the adoption is finalized. It's crucial to note that the specific requirements and processes can vary based on the laws, regulations, and agreements between Nigeria and the receiving country. Prospective adoptive parents should consult with adoption agencies, immigration authorities, and legal professionals specializing in international adoption to obtain accurate and up-to-date information about the criteria and processes specific to their situation. Additional points to consider regarding the criteria for international adoption of a Nigerian child to parents in the United States or other countries. Adoption fees and expenses. International adoption often involves various fees and expenses. These can include application fees, home study fees, agency fees, legal fees, travel expenses, and expenses related to the child's care and documentation. It's important for prospective adoptive parents to understand and plan for these costs, as they can vary significantly depending on the countries involved and the adoption agencies or facilitators utilized. Adoption regulations and documentation. Prospective adoptive parents must comply with the adoption regulations and documentation requirements of both Nigeria and their home country. This typically involves completing adoption application forms, providing personal documents, such as birth certificates, marriage certificates, and passports, obtaining background checks, and ensuring all necessary legal documents are in order. Home country adoption requirements. Parents seeking to adopt internationally must also fulfill the adoption requirements of their home country. This can involve meeting specific age limits, marriage requirements, and passing home studies or assessments conducted by adoption agencies or authorities in their home country. Citizenship and immigration processes. Once the adoption is finalized, the child's citizenship and immigration status in the receiving country must be addressed. This usually involves applying for an immigrant visa or other appropriate documents to legally bring the child into the country. The adoptive parents will need to follow the immigration procedures set by their home country's immigration authorities. Cultural considerations. International adoption involves bringing a child from one culture into another. Prospective adoptive parents should be prepared to navigate the cultural and heritage aspects of the adopted child's background. It's important to respect and maintain connections to the child's Nigerian culture and heritage to promote their well-being and identity. It's crucial for prospective adoptive parents to work closely with adoption agencies, legal professionals, and immigration authorities to navigate the specific criteria and processes for international adoption. Each country may have different requirements and procedures, so seeking guidance from experts familiar with adoption laws and regulations in both Nigeria and the receiving country is highly recommended.